For geography this week, we are in the Caribbean. So here we have our world map, and you'll notice there's this little box, and then zoom in, that's where we're going to be looking. So this right here is just a zoomed in picture of that little place right there. It's called an inset. So we have Cuba is our blue country. The shark can point to it with his nose. We've got Cuba, and then down here is Jamaica, that little red country. And then Haiti is the orange part of this island, and Dominican Republic is the green part, and Puerto Rico is the purple island. Cuba, Jamaica, then there's Haiti, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico to the east, oh, islands of Caribbean, cha-cha-cha. Cuba, Jamaica, then there's Haiti, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico to the east, oh, islands of Caribbean, cha-cha-cha. Let's go through our timeline motions. So we start with 500 AD. You do 5 fingers and a C for 100. 500 AD, 500 AD. This is my favorite part of the timeline song. And then we say Byzantine Emperor, and we're going to do a sash down. So you put your fingers on top of your thumb, and we're going to go like this for Emperor Justinian. Byzantine Emperor Justinian. Then you have Benedict and monasticism. So do another B, and then we're going to pretend that we're flipping up a hood on our head, like how the monks would wear these hoods on their head. So Benedict and monasticism. Muhammad founds Islam. So do an M. So you've got your 3 finger, your thumb is under your 3 fingers, just like a cursive M is 3 humps. So Muhammad founds Islam. And so for Islam, we're going to do like 2 little knees. Looks like 2 little knees are resting, praying. Because in Islam, they pray throughout the day. So Muhammad founds Islam, and then Zanjan early Ghana in Africa. So we're going to assign trade, which is just like how when you trade something, you give someone something and they give you something. So trading is just like this. It's back and forth to trade. And then there's some drumming. So we're just going to pretend to drum. Then Franks defeat Muslims at the Battle of Tours. So you guys should know the sign for defeat is when you put someone into submission. So Franks defeat Muslims. So do an M again. Do the praying. I think I've got it like this, where they're praying, the little kneeling, and then we're going to sign war. So Franks defeat Muslims at the Battle of Tours, and then Golden Age of Islam. So we're going to touch our ear like we have gold in our ear, and then we do a Y for yellow. This is how we sign like there's gold in your ear, like the yellow and gold. And then we'll sign Muslim again with the little kneeling knees. And then Vikings raid and trade. So we'll do a V for Vikings, and we're gonna raid, like we're taking stuff, and we're gonna trade. Okay, let's do it with the music.
580, 580. Byzantine Emperor Justinian, Benedict and monasticism. Mohammed founds Islam, Zanjan early Ghana in Africa. Franks defeat Muslims at the Battle of Tours. Golden Age of Islam. Ooh. Vikings raid and trade. 580, 580. Byzantine Emperor Justinian, Benedict and monasticism. Mohammed founds Islam, Zanjan early Ghana in Africa. Franks defeat Muslims at the Battle of Tours. golden age of Islam. Ooh, Vikings raid and trade.
English, interrogative pronouns. What is an interrogative pronoun? An interrogative pronoun is a pronoun used to ask a question, like who, whom, whose, which, what? Let's look at some examples. So, for the interrogative pronoun who, you would use it like this. Who drew the picture? Calvin drew the picture. For whom, you might say something like, you gave the money to whom? I gave the money to Theo. Whose? Look at that beautiful house. Whose is it? For which? Which cupcake would you like? Oh, I would like the chocolate one with pink icing. What? What is God? God is the creator of everyone and everything.
Interrogative pronoun. Ask a question. Interrogative pronoun. Ask a question. Who, whom, whose, which, what? 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 Interrogative pronoun.
For Latin, we are starting the pluperfect tense endings. And you'll see here I have this perfectly blue sky with a little kitty cat flying through the air. And we can remember our pluperfect tense. It's like that blue sky that is blue perfect or pluperfect. And you can remember our little kitty cat flying through the blue perfect sky. The pluperfect tense is used to describe finished actions that have been completed at a point in time in the past. So these are things that have already happened. They're finished actions. We know that they are done. So let's go through our endings.
Eram, eras, erat, eramis, eratus, erant. First conjugation, pluperfect tense. Eram, eras, erat, eramis, eratus, erant. First conjugation, pluperfect tense.
Between the 1500s and 1800s, Henry VIII of England, Louis XIV of France, Philip II of Spain, Peter the Great of Russia, and Frederick the Great of Prussia ruled during the age of absolute monarchs. Between the 1500s and 1800s, Henry VIII of England, Louis XIV of France, Philip II of Spain, Peter the Great of Russia, and Frederick the Great of Prussia ruled during the age of absolute monarchs.
Great job singing the history sentence. But I have a question. When we're talking about the age of absolute monarchs, I want to know, what is an absolute monarch? An absolute monarch is a leader who rules with unlimited power. And between the 1500s and 1800s, kings began to claim more authority by claiming that they had divine right from God. This means that they claimed that their power came directly from God. See, before this, like in the feudal system, remember the feudal system in Europe? The popes still limited the king's power. They didn't give the king divine right to rule. And so this, it challenged the kings a little bit. They didn't have as much power as they might want. So they started claiming that they had this divine right from God. And I want to know also, with any time we study history, so what? Why does this matter? Is this information really important? Well, I'm going to try to explain. But please always remember, you should do research on your own. It is important that you read books and that you try to understand for yourself what is interesting about this or what is important about this. Anytime you learn something, if you hear something and it sparks your interest or you think, oh, that's really interesting, or you have a question, go and explore that question. Read books, find information, and learn more about that thing. So remember how I said that the kings were limited by the Pope's power? Well, that's because the Roman Catholic Church, the popes, the church has rules. They have things that they say they will allow and that they will not allow. And Henry VIII of England, he really wanted to challenge the Roman Catholic Church. So let me tell you about him. He was known as a fierce, raging king who loved to eat a lot, like gluttonous amounts of food. He liked to party, and he even was known to have people's heads chopped off. And 2 of those people were his wives. So Henry VIII had a lot of wives. So he broke away from the Catholic Church because the Pope would not allow Henry to divorce his first wife. See, he really, really wanted to have a son. Because in a monarchy, remember, it's kind of like all in the family. Like, if you're a king and you have a son, then your son will go on to become king and you can keep your family in the monarchy as the royal family. Well, his first wife couldn't bear him a son. And so he wanted to divorce her and marry somebody else that could give him a son. But the Roman Catholic Church said, no, the divorce we don't allow that. It's not okay. And so Henry was like, okay, well, I'm not going to be part of that church anymore. And so he started a new church called the Church of England and established himself as the head. Well, Henry really got carried away with this whole marry, divorce, and he ended up having 6 wives in total. And like I said, he chopped off 2 of their heads. Now we have Louis XIV of France. Now, I have a little son over here in the corner, and that is because he is known as the Sun King. So I read 2 things. I read that he is known as the Sun King for all of the wealth and splendor of his court of Versailles, which you're going to look at in just a second. But I also read that he believed that France revolved around him like the planets revolve around the sun. So he adopted the sun as his symbol. I don't know which one is true, like if he named himself the Sun King or if he just ended up being known as that. But either way, that's what he's known as, is the Sun King. And one of the things that he did, there is no doubt, was building the Palace of Versailles. So he spent 47 years building the Palace of Versailles. And it's located just outside of Paris in the city of Versailles. So if you're ever in Paris, it would be worth checking this place out. It is incredible. And out of all of the money that France had, the Palace of Versailles costs 1/4 of the nation's money to maintain. So Louis XIV had a lot of money tied up in this place. It was very expensive. It was very elaborate. I mean, just look at the Hall of Mirrors. There are over 357 mirrors in this hall alone. Absolutely gorgeous. And both the Peace of Paris Treaty of Paris was signed in this hall. And also, the treaty that ended World War I, called the Treaty of Versailles, was signed within the depths of the Hall of Mirrors. It is a really, really famous place, and I would love to see it someday. So let's learn a little bit more about King Louis XIV. He became king at the ripe young age of 4. Do you guys know any 4-year-olds? Do you think they could be an absolute monarch of a country? No. So he had other people that helped him. I don't think that he was making any decisions at 4, but he was crowned king at 4 years old. And as he grew up, he wanted to increase the size of France. So he embarked on many very costly wars. How do you think France paid for these expensive wars? Do you remember how that battle King John paid for wars? Remember, we had Richard the Lionhearted, and then he had his little brother John became king, and he was fighting wars in France. How did he pay for them? He taxed the people. The people were heavily taxed in France as well by King Louis XIV. And over again in history, what happens when the people are treated unfairly, overtaxed, when they're unhappy with their ruler? What happens? Uprising! So the reign of Louis XIV set the stage for the French Revolution. And we're going to learn about the French Revolution in week 11. So just, not next week, but the week after that, we're going to learn all about the French Revolution. And you can remember that King Louis XIV set the stage. He was getting the people were starting to get ready for a revolution under his reign. So let's look at Philip II of Spain. Philip II was a king of Spain during the Golden Age. So the Golden Age was a time of great cultural growth in literature, music, and art. Philip II was a devout Roman Catholic. Unlike Henry VIII, remember Henry VIII broke off from the Roman Catholic Church and started the Church of England? Well, Philip II did not like that. He was a devout Catholic, and he did not agree with the Protestant Reformation, with the Church of England. So he believed it was his job to win worldwide power for Spain so that he could restore Catholicism. So, how do you think he wanted to gain worldwide power? Through war, waging war. So he won Portugal, conquered Portugal. He won against the Turkish Ottomans, but he lost in the Netherlands. And another very famous battle that Philip II led was called the Spanish Armada. Ever heard of it? You probably have in our timeline song. This was when Philip tried to defeat England. He sent 130 ships to attack. But guess what? He couldn't defeat England. The Spanish Armada was a failed attempt to defeat England. So let's just remember some things about Philip II. He ruled during the Golden Era. Remember this? Remember how I said he ruled during the Golden Era? Well, sometimes he's called the prudent king because when he became king, he inherited some financial troubles from the previous king of Spain. And so he really he tried to expand Spain. He wanted to strengthen the Catholic Church, and he wanted to make his own power absolute because he was an absolute monarch. Peter the Great of Russia. In Russia, they call their ruler a czar, which means the emperor, or like another word for king of Russia. So, Peter the Great of Russia, he really wanted to modernize Russia. He wanted them to be current with the times of the rest of the world. So he traveled extensively. That means he traveled around a whole lot around Europe to prepare himself to learn what are these other countries doing, how are they doing it, and how can I take that to my country so that we can advance and be modernized. So one problem that Russia had was that they did not have good access to the sea. So this was a problem that Peter the Great was determined to fix. Now here on our Baltic Sea, remember the lady playing the flute? Peter the Great led Russia into war against Sweden. because Sweden controlled the Baltic Sea and Russia needed access to the sea, and they just didn't have it. So he starts a war with Sweden, and this war is called the Great Northern War. And in this war, Russia won, and Peter went on to expand the Russian Empire by claiming Persia and gaining control of the land around the Caspian Sea as well. So what else did Peter the Great do for Russia? He brought Western ideas to Russia. That's that modernization I was talking about. He built schools and hospitals. He strengthened the army by making it more modern, making the government more modern. And he really wanted Russia to be like the rest of Europe. When I say westernized, I'm talking about like the western part of Europe that you see. Because remember how we talked about Russia is really on two continents. It's on Europe and Asia. And so he wanted Russia to be really more like this European Western society. So he would tax people who wore beards and dressed in Asian clothing. Why would he do that? He wanted to westernize Russia. He wanted them to look, act, be like the western side of Europe. But not everybody liked this. But that was just too bad because Peter the Great was an absolute monarch. All right, Frederick the Great of Prussia. Where is Prussia, you may ask? Well, Prussia was a kingdom in what is now Germany. Why was he called Frederick the Great? Because he was a military genius and he made Prussia a great European power. So whenever there's a ruler, like when we're talking about these absolute monarchs, a question that I had was, what were they trying to achieve? What was this ruler in their absolute power trying to achieve? So Frederick the Great wanted to build a great army. So he paid the Prussian soldiers were well taken care of. They were fed, equipped, he paid them well. And he spent the first half of his reign waging war. He led Prussia during the 7 Years' War. Now, the 7 Years' War is really interesting. And so I suggest reading about it. Go to the library, try to find a book about it. It's fascinating. And Winston Churchill, who was the leader of England during World War II, was a wonderful world leader. But he said he called the 7 Years' War the First World War. So he said that it was really like the First World War. Why would he say that? Go read about it and you'll find out. But Frederick the Great, he wanted Prussia to be cultured, educated, and strong in industry. So military was a really important thing to him. But he also cared about, people being educated and cultured. So Frederick the Great, military genius. That's a really good thing to learn about it. And these are our absolute monarchs that we're learning about this week. So if you have any questions or you want to know more about any of them, go to the library, try to find out some more information. You can do it. You can learn about this on your own, just like I did. When I wanted to learn, I looked up books, I look up on the internet, I go to encyclopedias that are online, and I read about these things to try to understand who these people were. For science this week, I'm going to need your help singing in silly voices. So I'll sing it normal the first time, and then we're going to do some silly voices while we learn parts of the sun.
All right, we're going to sing it regular voice, okay? Some parts of the sun are core, radiative zone, convective zone, sunspots, photosphere, solar flare, and corona. These are some parts of the sun. Real southern or in a cowboy voice. So, some parts of the sun are core, radiative zone, convective zone, sunspots, photosphere, solar flare, and corona. These are some parts of the sun. Now do it choppy like how a robot might say it. Some parts of the sun are core, radiative zone, convective zone, sunspots, photosphere, solar flare, beep, beep, and corona. These are some parts of the sun.
Multiplying the 15s. As we go through these answers, I want you to see if you notice a pattern. And look specifically at the last number in our answer. So our answer number is this number here. Look at that last digit and see if you can find a pattern. Okay, 15 times 1 is 15. 15 times 2 is 30. 15 times 3 is 45. 15 times 4 is 60. 15 times 5 is 75. 15 times 6 is 90. 15 times 7 is 105. 15 times 8 is 120. 15 times 9 is 135. 15 times 10 is 150. 15 times 11 is 165. 15 times 12 is 180. 15 times 13 is 195. 15 times 14 is 210. And 15 times 15 is 225. So, what's the pattern? The numbers the numbers either end in 5 or 0.
15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90, 105, 120, 135, 150, 165, 180, 195, 210, 225. 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90, 105, 120, 135, 150, 165, 180, 195, 210, 225.